I'll print out the questions so I can be a little bit prepared.
Oh, sure, yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna ask those questions, but a lot of like introductory and relaxed stuff as well. So don't feel any pressure.
Nope.
And if there's anything that is privileged information you can't answer, like that's totally fine. Yep. Okay. So yeah, I just want to start off by saying thanks again for meeting with me. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially on such short notice. So
no worries.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to me. So I'm just doing a report about a local environmental sustainability issue. It could have been anything, and I just thought that this was a big project that's going on, and I thought it'd be perfect to learn more about it. So I'm just looking to learn a bit more about the planning, the problems, the decision making, and just kind of like the behind the scenes process of evaluating a sustainability issue like this, and then how to come to some sort of resolution when you've got like conflicting ideas, or this is the first time Kamloops has done that. So so some of these questions will have an overlap with the Let's Talk Kamloops page, so I apologize if you
That's
answered
all
this
right.
like 100
No,
times.
that's fine. We just finished grant application, so I'm writing a report for that right now, and a lot of these questions are from the the funders are asking, so it's all very fresh in my mind.
Okay, should be easy for you to answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, like who you are and your background and why you got involved in solid waste services?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Marcia Dick. I've been working with the city since June of 2016, so just over 5 years now. But I have been working in waste management since probably like my final 2 years of university, when I went to TRU and was appalled of the lack of recycling at the university at that time. So I joined some. I was one of the founding members of the TRU Eco Club.
Oh, nice.
And I was part of what's now Enactus, but it was then called ACE, and developed a project for a commercial recycling program for the city of Kamloops. So since then, I have just been like up to my neck in waste management.
Right.
I've worked contracts with the regional district straight out of university on like developing recycling directories, and started my own business called Waste Not BC, where I did waste audits and waste management planning. So TRU is one of my clients. Currently working on their 5-year zero waste plan. So waste
so you're well versed.
Yeah, waste is my passion. I was recently awarded the Public Sector Award through the Recycling Council in British Columbia for
congratulations.
Environmental protection. So that was quite an honor.
Yeah, that's really exciting for you. No, that answers that perfectly. So what does environmental sustainability mean to you?
Well, it's we have to be mindful of our resources and our planet. Like, we have one planet, so a lot of what we're doing is depleting our resources, and so sustainability, or even going beyond into like the regeneration, I think is where our planet needs to move. But it just means like not taking more than what the planet can provide.
Exactly.
And maybe offsetting what some of the others are doing. I'm like, why are you idling? The idling drives me crazy, and I almost bite people's heads off for it. So I need to.
Yeah, I think that something we really need to work on is driving a car with only one person in it.
Yeah.
If we could just learn to carpool or find some sort of system that worked a lot better for the community, we could really reduce our emissions quite a bit.
There's so many areas of improvement.
There really are. Can you tell me about where the idea to implement a curbside organic waste program came from?
Well, it's always, I think, been on the horizon for the city. We operate under the regional district, so regional districts have authority for waste management. So it has been identified in the region's solid waste management plan as a priority for the city of Kamloops. And it also, back in, I can't remember when it was, a long time ago, I tried to start a curbside private collection. got a few customers, had a few commercial customers, and I approached the city at that time, which was, probably in 2012 or 13.
Okay.
And they're like, oh yeah, it's, next couple years. So here we are, 2021.
Right.
And now we're finally going to move forward with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, at least we're getting there, right?
Yeah.
Change is always hard and people are hesitant. But I'm sure the city sees
the priorities too. Priorities has been a thing. Like council, we have a friendly council now that's kind of like Arjun Singh has been really driving the sustainability and climate action sort of thing on council. So it really helps to have that council directive and support. And we have a few councillors that are really, what are we doing about waste? And sort of like asking those questions. I think that's been helpful too. Driving.
So earlier you mentioned you were filling out grant applications. So can you tell me a bit about that? Like, is the federal government subsidizing this, or is it at the provincial level?
Yeah. So we've applied for 2 grants so far. One through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which is a federal grant, federal level grant. It's called the Green Municipal Fund, and they fund projects at the feasibility study, pilot level, and full implementation. So we've applied for feasibility study grant, and I can't say anything yet because we're embargoed, but really confident that we'll get that grant. And we've also in the process of applying for pilot program funding through that same funder. And then the province, actually, we applied for a full grant through the province. So the Clean BC program has funding for its organic waste collection and infrastructure projects. So,
yeah, that's great. So kind of getting a few different levels of backing here.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Okay, can you tell me a bit about the stakeholders? So who are they? Why are they interested in curbside or organic collection? And what are their views and values on this issue?
Yeah, I guess the primary stakeholders would be residents.
Right.
Specifically, what we're looking at is curbside, so single-family homes residents. But so those would be, I guess, the key stakeholders. But there's also city council, because they're sort of the decision makers around this. And then other levels, like our funders would be a stakeholder, partners, potential partners. Like we've engaged with Kamloops, University, and as well as the private hauler, like Friendly Composting, who's going to be affected by this. So those are the stakeholders we've identified. In terms of their level of support, we have full support by our city council. They're every time we go to council with an update or an ask, they're like, you're doing good, keep going. They have some questions, but they're fully supportive of what we're doing, and it's like, it's about time. Let's keep moving.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. We did complete public engagement. So we had we launched our public engagement in February, and it went through till end of May. So we did we have an engagement website called Let's Talk Kamloops, and through that we developed a page for organic waste collection, and on that page we had questions and answers. We had a quick poll, and then we did launched a public survey from April 6th to May 18th. And we received over 4,300 responses through the survey. Yeah, huge. It was the most uptake that we've ever had on a survey, according to our communications team. Lots of engaged. People were very engaged. We received over 120 questions through our Q&A. People are very connected with waste. Like, you can do something to the roads and you're going to get, a bit of uptake or transportation or whatever, but when it comes down to waste, everybody seems to be very engaged. So the survey showed that 79% of residents support this program, 15% were opposed, and 6% were neutral. Yeah.
Interesting. So why do you think that some people are opposed to it? Do they have any?
So we looked at some of the reasons. So a lot of the opposition actually came from people who backyard compost and don't feel that they need the service. Because we did actually ask one question. One of the questions was around sentiment, and 94% of people responded that they agree that reducing what goes to the landfill is the right thing to do, and 92% said that composting helps the environment. So, people think that it's good to reduce waste and compost, but they're not sure whether the city should be doing
right. Okay.
Like a lot of the people were like, well, there's friendly composting. What you're taking away business from them, or it should be done at the private sector level. I think there's always a percentage of the population that it doesn't matter what the city does, they're going to oppose it.
That's fair.
So it's just because of the city, but people generally, I think, are on board and support it.
That's great. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
I actually happen to be in the test pilot area.
Oh,
so
exciting.
I'm really looking forward to trying it out and trying to get my family on board.
Yeah.
Formerly, I used to live in Vancouver for a while, and they have a food scraps collection program. And yeah, there was a bit of some people in my building really liked it and were on board, and other people despised it and just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the mess and the smell.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips or advice on how to?
Yeah, I think that we haven't heard from those people yet because they didn't engage with us.
Right. Okay.
We had. There's some areas where we got really low response rates on our survey, and I feel it's areas where people aren't engaged, like in rental, like a lot of rental areas. But yeah, we did learn, because we interviewed many municipalities that are collecting organics, and asking about top concerns, what are the issues, what do you do about them. And a lot of the issues are around odor and smell, odor and maggot, fruit flies. And one of the key things that they, messaging is around, properly managing it. So you can freeze it, you can bag it. I mean, in Vancouver, and we won't accept the compostable plastic bags either, but wrapping it in paper, layering your carts with dried material really helps to soak up the smelly liquids. But yeah, I think the most effective way is freezing it before you put it out for collection.
Okay.
And it doesn't, it's frozen, it doesn't smell.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where were some of the other municipalities that you reached out to and asked about their program?
Yeah, so we reached out to several in the Lower Mainland. We spoke to Surrey, Port Moody, Coquitlam, Salmon Arm. Theirs was pretty recent. City of Calgary, City of Edmonton. Nanaimo.
Yeah, that's great. Lots of places.
Lots of places, yeah. As many as we could get to communication with. And then it was we could keep going, but you're just getting sort of more of the same, and everybody does it a little bit different, but generally it's a lot of the same kind of messages.
So you mentioned that odor was something that...
And a Gibson's.
That odor seemed to be the biggest problem that most people had.
Yeah.
Were there any other problems that arose with the collection program itself?
Yeah. So in Calgary and Edmonton, they had a lot of problems with material freezing inside of the carts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in one case, they had 80% of carts had the material didn't come out when it got tipped.
Oh no.
So we're not quite as cold as Edmonton, so I don't expect it's going to be quite that bad. But they were asking residents to get in there with
break it up,
shovel and get it off the inside, so that's going to be a challenge. When in our survey, we did ask residents what their top concerns were, and wildlife. And we heard a lot through the Q&A as well, what are you going to do about it's just going to attract bears and bears and bears and bears, and it's actually what we learned from other municipalities is that there hasn't been a wildlife concern or issues. Like, people don't, there's not rats everywhere. People would say, oh, I did it in Surrey and there was rats everywhere. Like, well, I mean, it had rats, but I don't think it was because of the organics carts, because rats can't get into the carts, and unless you're putting it bagged on the street, we're not asking you to do that. So, yeah, I think that I think some of the barriers are just going to be around just participating and like not like just not knowing what to do, or just I think that if everyone just like tries it, it's not as bad as what you like the ick factor, right? You're already dealing with it in your garbage, so it's just pretty good. So it's that behavior change. It's not a hard behavior, but the behavior change. It's hard for sure. Getting to somebody to change their behavior, it's not an easy thing to do unless they're willing to do it.
So do you feel like programs like this one will help people change their behavior overall when it comes to other environmental issues? I've heard that is the case, is that when people participate in one behavior, that they're more likely to try another behavior. So I'm hoping that that's the case. And, we get a lot of flack about our recycling program from residents. We can't put anything in there. It all goes into the landfill. What's the point? And I think there's a lot of just generally like no trust in recycling, and so people don't. But I think that's kind of a separate issue. But maybe with the organics, it's like they know, okay, this is going to go be composted in my community, and I can see where it's going. It's pretty simple compared to recycling, so I'm going to participate, and maybe that will, I don't know, get them to try riding their bike or that would be great.
But
I mean, it's really not that hard of a change when you think about it, because we already, we have our recycling bin and you have a garbage bin.
Yeah.
What's one more bin just for food?
Yeah.
It's not that big of a change, so hopefully it should be fairly smooth. But
I hope so. We'll see. We'll have some incentives.
Yeah, good.
The incentive is that your garbage is only going to be picked up every second week, so you're going to want to put that smelly stuff in the weekly pickup in.
So were there any other arguments against the issue?
Cost was the big one. Although, so I was one of it was funny, we asked the residents their top concern. The first one was wildlife, and the second one was fees, although those were like almost like 25% each. And then the third one was actually, no, I don't have any concerns. So 19% of people said, I don't have any concerns as their top concern. And then the fourth one was from backyard composters that don't feel they need the service. So even though the fees was a concern, when we looked at those people who were concerned about fees, a lot of them fully support the program, so they just wanted to make sure that the fees were appropriate. A lot of people see fees for service, like this is like it's going to be a user fee, right? It's not, but they see user fees as tax grabs, and it's not the same. Like it's not general taxation, right? Like the fees for this program are going to cover the cost of the program versus going into the general coffers.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so I know you probably can't say this, but it should be like between $8 and $10 per month or something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say much more than we don't know for sure. One of the big unknowns is frequency of collection for recycling. Pretty confident that we'll be able to go bi-weekly on our garbage because we're taking material out of the garbage, but with respect to recycling, will residents be able to manage 2 weeks of recycling in their carts? I feel like, I don't put my cart out every week, and we do audit recycling carts on a regular basis, and like 52% of them are half full or less. So I'm thinking that people will be able to manage, and I'm hoping the pilot proves it out, because if we do have to go to weekly collection on our recycling, that means we're going to need to get 5 more trucks at least, which is like millions of dollars.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 5 new operators and 5 new, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some of the positive and negative impacts of executing the plan?
I haven't really thought of any negative ones, to be honest. Like, I mean, if we are able to do bi-weekly garbage and recycling collection, and we get our grants, there's really, like, the cost to the community is very small relative to the whole program.
Right.
For implementing a new service. So, some costs would be, I guess, the negative. The only negative I can think of is that we're putting an extra cost on residents, and especially residents that, you know, they have a small household. They already don't fill up their garbage can every week. And now we're giving them another can, and we're giving them another fee. I totally understand where they're coming from, is that, you know, I think of the retired couple that have very little waste already, and they're already paying more than they should because they only really need monthly pickup, but we have weekly pickup and they're paying for weekly pickup, and now we're gonna charge them more for diverting their organics. So that's the only real negative I can see from it. But the positives are like numerous. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We estimate that, you know, we'll reduce our community greenhouse gases by 2,800 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, which is like taking like 600 cars off the road. And that's just based on estimates right now, so we'll know better. Reducing what goes into the landfill and extending the life of our landfill.
Yes.
You know, taking waste product and turning it into beneficial end use, so feeding our soils and participating in the circular economy, creating jobs. You know, there's a lot of benefits.
I agree.
Economic, social, environmental, political, right? Like the council that's bringing this in, like, it's good for them.
Exactly.
It's good. You know?
Benefits on all sides.
Yeah.
So you mentioned trucks.
Yeah.
The trucks that go and do all the pickup. So if you're doing it on a bi-weekly basis between recycling and composting, then it should be about the same amount of driving, right? The emissions that the trucks are producing.
Yeah. So we would go, right now we do garbage and recycling weekly. So a truck goes by every week, picks up your garbage and recycling. What we would do is 1 week we would do garbage and organics. The next week we would do recycling and organics. So we would be adding no more new trucks to the road.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
If we can make that system work.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we can, because if user fees are are one of the top concerns, then residents, you know, theoretically should support bi-weekly collection so that user fees can be kept low.
Yes, that is true. When we're talking about the funding from the provincial and federal government, is that long-term funding or short-term funding?
It's short-term funding. So it's the provincial grant it's basically to get the program off the ground. So the provincial grant covered basically 2/3 of the capital costs. So because it's a collection, it's just basically 2/3 of the cost of the carts plus all the education and communication and staff time of developing the program, getting it off. It doesn't cover, though, our pilot or our feasibility study. It's only for the full implementation. So, but carts are the most expensive part of the program. It's like, I mean, you think, it's only like $50 a cart, but there's 26,000 of them. So it's over $1 million for the carts.
Just the carts,
yeah, I think it's $1.8 million just for the carts. And then we're going to give everybody a kitchen catcher, so the little caddy that you can put on your sink. We got some bin liners, the paper bin liners to trial. And we'll see if it is. Everybody said, "Oh, you've got to give these out to residents." You know, that we're going to see how if they're effective, or if people are hesitant to buy them or want to make their own kind of thing.
Or if they prefer to use newspaper or something.
Yeah. There's lots of different ways. I know that it's you can make a bag out of newspaper, but it takes effort.
So when it comes to the compostable bags that you can, like the liners. So why has the city decided not to use those?
For the pilot, we're going to be sending our material to a facility in Princeton, and they said they don't want those.
Okay.
They're not. The compostable plastics take a lot longer to break down in the composting processes. So if the facility has a shorter sort of throughput,
sure.
The material doesn't break down. And also there's a lot of a lot of confusion around compostable, like certified compostable versus there's products out there that say, biodegradable. Well, biodegradable and compostable from a layperson's perspective doesn't, they mean the same thing.
Yes.
But from a composting operations perspective, they're totally different.
Right, okay.
Right? One is plastic that breaks down into smaller plastics, and one is made from
Go back to soil.
Go back to soil, and you can turn it back into soil. So there's also that sort of where the processor, and we don't know long term where our material is going to end up, but to play it safe, we don't want to say, it'd be safer to say no and then change our mind and say yes later than to say yes and then change our mind. Because we did that with our recycling program. We said, yes, glass, yes, plastic bags. And then to take that away is very painful.
It was a big deal.
But to put them in, way easier.
Right.
So, yeah.
That makes sense. So is this program going to affect any beneficiaries disproportionately, or I guess you sort of answered that, where an older couple might not be producing as much garbage.
Yeah, and I think that's where the biggest sort of disproportionate thing is, where it is. I would love to go to a user pay system, and we're trying to bring in RFID technology, so that we can, if we at some point down the road we could. And that's how you could implement it. Like basically you pay for how many times you put your card out for collection. I would love that. And that would be more fair and something that we are trying to work towards. But until then, it's kind of sorry that, we're trying our best by offering 4 different sizes for garbage. But, I'm a family of 4. I have the smallest can. I put it out maybe once a month, and that's, and I'm getting rid of my cat, or I inherited a cat, and she's leaving tomorrow. So after that, we could probably go, I would say almost a year. I don't know,
wow.
Incredible. I compost everything, I recycle everything, and what's left is a little bit of craft, whatever,
sure.
Twist ties, or I don't even know. There's just nothing that can't be recycled or composted. So, I forget where it's that kind of. That's
okay. That's actually really, really impressive. How did you manage to produce the smallest amount of waste?
Well, there's just I don't know. Our family went zero waste for a while. For a while. And so if you avoid whatever things that can't be recycled or composted, and really there's, at the end of the day, if you recycle everything you can. We go to the depot, we put all our soft plastics at the depot, all our plastic bags, all our packaging. Unless we're doing a renovation project, what's left is nothing, right? All your wood can go in your compost, all your, I don't even know, we save our elastic bands.
Yeah.
I use a reusable menstrual cup. There's some dental floss. It doesn't take up a lot of room in a garbage can. You can get compostable stuff now. I don't know.
Incredible. Yeah, I'm just blown away. That's awesome.
Our thing is full of cat feces.
Yeah.
And the litter box stuff. So that's really all that's in there. Crayons and painted paper.
Okay, some decision-making questions. So, how was the project decided? Like, city council just voted on it? Use the public's feedback in making decisions?
Yeah, so the project was kind of initiated by management and directors. So there was a resolution a while back where council wanted the city to bring forward a commercial recycling program. Management's position, and I totally agree that commercial recycling is a challenge. Because there's no EPR, like residentially, we have what's called extended producer responsibility for packaging, but we don't have that for businesses. So, and then at the time, the market, it was when China just implemented their national sword, where there was no markets for recyclables. Anyway, back then, I think it was a couple of years ago, similar time when the plastic bag ban came forward to council, management said, let's not focus on commercial recycling, let's focus on organics. And that's when the shift. Sure. Council was like, all right, let's focus on residential organics, or organics in general. Mm-hmm. And so in March of 2020 is when COVID hit, everyone's gone home, and that's when I was put onto the project. And we started working on it, and then we go to council, committee, provided updates, is this kind of the direction we're looking for? Yeah, carry on. And then back in November, we went to full council with the concept of basically phasing in a 3-phase program for, we'll do a feasibility study, a pilot program, and then a full implementation. Here's the timeline, here's the funding, here's what estimated costs. And then, November. And so we went to November with just timing and everything, and then again in December we asked for commitments so that we could apply for grants. Right. And then since then we've been we went back to the committee in June, just recently, and then we'll go to full council again in August with what we're planning for the pilot, and just to get them to sign off. Because when we initially presented costs, they've kind of been growing ever since. That it's like, oh, what about this? Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So we did present what we call D-level estimates, which are basically plus or minus 50%, usually more plus. Yeah. So ultimately council is the ones that makes the decisions, but only very high level decisions. A lot of decisions are made at the staff and management level, and it's usually and we did our public consultation and got a lot of feedback from residents, and so we use this, it's called an IAP2 spectrum for public something. It's a international sort of public engagement, so it goes along the spectrum of inform to empower, and there's different stages. And so we sort of went halfway through, because it's hard for having you don't want to have public that don't know too much about everything to be making decisions on it. So we take we went to the public, we got their feedback, we listened to them, look what are their top concerns, and then so we take those into consideration during the planning, but not using them as okay, that's the direction we're going, right? They're concerned about wildlife, but actually there's, let's learn more about that, because, for example, we could have provided bear-resistant carts, which are 5 times the price of regular carts, but the decision was let's just see what happens in the pilot before we go ahead and, add another $400,000 in costs to this program for something that might not be effective or even needed. Right. So, yeah. But yeah, using as much information, basing decisions off of information. So we also did composition audits to analyze, we set objectives saying, okay, this is how much we think is in the waste stream. We'll be doing audits throughout the pilot to assess whether or not we're meeting our objectives so that we can make decisions based on information. I don't know if that makes sense, but so we did a composition study in May where we looked at the organic composition of residential garbage, and it actually went up from the most recent composition study we had from 2011, and so we built our estimates based on that composition, and like because if the composition came back and said, oh my god, like everybody's backyard composting, there's no compost we shouldn't move forward with this program. But because there's 43% of garbage is organic waste, then maybe it's the decision to move forward is supported with fact or data, and we will also be doing them throughout the pilot. So we'll be doing early on in the pilot. We plan to compare composition of garbage and organics with areas that don't have organics collection. We'll be able to compare, the amounts, and make decisions based on how the program's performing.
So did anybody need to make compromises during the formulation of this plan? So like between stakeholders, like the public and like city council, was there any like meeting in the middle about issues they disagreed on?
I don't think from the stakeholders. Maybe internally there was some disagreement on some things, but I think I was like, let's just trial the bear carts because. As resident top concern, I think we should show them that we're listening, but my view wasn't supported. So, sure. And I'm not a manager or decision maker,
okay.
So
that's fair.
Little things. So I'm always like, let's do the best as possible, and my management and supervisor draws it back a little bit. So. I should aim for the stars,
yeah,
and they bring it to
that's right.
Here. So, at least we have that, and it's not like that,
For sure, that makes complete sense. I think just talking to you has answered so many of my questions already. So I'm just scrolling through to find ones I have. So the city currently uses the waste management company to pick up its garbage?
Nope, we collect in-house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're all city employees, city trucks. A lot of municipalities, well, I don't know what the percentage is, but many collect in-house and many contracted out.
Oh, interesting.
We're an in-house collector.
Oh, sorry, I must be mistaken. I was thinking of Vancouver or something.
That's all right. Vancouver's all contracted out.
Yeah. So did you guys have any companies that tried to bid for this contract, as far as you know?
No, I mean they just. I don't think locally, the haulers really. Friendly Composting was actually quite keen on. They're like, well, maybe we could do this, but the scale,
right?
Not. I don't think they were really set up for that. Yeah. I don't think any of the haulers were really. If anything, I think one of the outcomes could be, or one of the decisions could be around handing the recycling back to Recycle BC, because right now we're under contract with Recycle BC to collect recycling, so they pay us $1.1 million or $1.2 million a year to collect recycling. But we could say, you know what, we're going to give that back to you, and then Recycle BC manages the recycling collection, and we just focus on garbage and organics. So that could be also, I don't know, we'd have to weigh that one out if it ever came to it.
Yeah.
But it's an option. And then they would just contract with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay, I read on the FAQ, somebody I think asked what was going to be done with the organic material after it's composted. So do you have any information on that or a plan?
Yeah, well, the material during the pilot will go to Princeton, and then they compost. They're huge. They have quite a big facility down there. That's where all our biosolids go to be composted. So they sell it to farmers or whatever. I don't know. It won't come back to the community pilot for sure. But we will issue an RFP for our for processing. And actually, we had actually issued an RFP back in April for the pilot program. And then somebody was like, "Oh, what about Arrow? No, we have an agreement with them, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, so we canceled the RFP. So we'll just dust that off again and do it for the poll. But so there isn't any local processing capacity, but we know that there's interest by some locals. The band is quite interested. So we'll see what happens in the next 2-3 years, whether they get up and running with some sort of facility locally. I know that there's a lot of issues with odorant when it comes to composting.
Yes.
Like I know Vancouver, they shut a couple different facilities down because of odor issues. And I don't think people in Kamloops are saying, do it locally, you know, like why don't local jobs? I'm like,
you're not gonna like it.
You're not gonna like it, you know.
Well, we all complained about the pulp mills. So
yeah, wait till organics. Yeah. Like that is way stinkier.
Yeah. You have to put it quite far out of town somewhere.
Yeah, and that's why there are facilities where we were, because Princeton wasn't even on my radar. There's a facility in Cache Creek called Pacific Substrate. There's another one in Lytton, just outside of Lytton. And then there's also Spa Hills near Burton.
Okay.
So those were the 3 that were on my radar that were within 100 kilometers, already capacity, kind of out in the, they're open windrow composting. So obviously odor's not, although we did actually hear from some angry residents near the facility in Lytton that they didn't want our waste going there.
Yeah, huge increase.
Yeah, I'm like, well, they're already taking stuff from Vancouver.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, so they're a huge facility. They're processing 200,000 tons a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's all open windrow, so I can imagine that, the people that live nearby don't like that very much.
Don't blame them.
Yeah.
So if the public has any questions or concerns about the project, what's the best way for the public to reach out?
They can reach out several ways. Best way right now, I guess, would just be through our Civic Operations Center. But there's, on our Let's Talk page, there's who's listening, and there's myself and my manager that's on the page. So if you email, it goes to Civic Operations and it will come to me.
Sure, yeah, which is how I found your email. Yeah. That's perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some other projects or objectives that you personally want to see implemented in Kamloops?
Yeah.
Or for the public to be made more aware of if they already exist?
Yeah, from a waste perspective or just generally sustainability?
Either or.
Yeah, well, Council just adopted our Community Climate Action Plan. So I'm really excited to see where that goes because there's some pretty ambitious targets.
Great.
And if that plan can be implemented, it's like the golden thing, these plans, they're beautiful bookmarks, right? or book,
exactly.
Sit on shelves. Yeah. So it's where the rubber when these plans get implemented, that's where change happens. And so if we can just implement the plans that are in place, then I'm excited, and I love working on projects, and I love the planning part, but actually going through and implementing, and then monitoring and all that. I'm hoping that just because of I oversee, so my 2 portfolios, I do the recycling program and the organics, and then all things related to collection, really, and glass collection. I'd really like to see that happen right now, because I've done a little bit of a cost analysis and like this would be easy and we could do it like very easily, and then that would sort of just make everybody stop complaining about our recycling program, I think. Yeah.
So what are some of the
Low-hanging fruit.
yeah, that's fair. Like, what are some of the challenges you're facing with making that happen with the glass collection?
It's not really a challenge, it's just priorities and resources right now. Like, I'm already sort of, like, my portfolio has grown huge, and I'm already like, just trying to stay afloat. Like, and I think everybody is kind of taxed as well. So, because I do the work, but I have a support, like my communications team. They're so like they support programs a lot, especially because it's a lot of education and communication. So, what are the priorities? And in relation to some of the other priorities that are going on to be,
and this project sounds like, well, it's huge for starters, it's the entire city.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like it will make a big impact on our landfills and also our greenhouse gas emissions. So that is a great priority to focus on for now. Maybe after this project is all smooth and you guys can go back to that.
Well, I think like curbside is going to be the beginning of it, because there's I'm hoping that we just don't stop there and that we can go, okay, now curbside's down, let's go multifamily, and then let's go see what we can do on the, maybe we need to start looking at all of our organics and commercially, like building a facility, because I know that you can, and like the organic feedstock could be potentially all used to create renewable natural gas. So that would be a really cool thing to happen and create lots of jobs and economic opportunities. So
interesting.
I think there's a lot of avenues that organics can bring to the table.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick once over, make sure I answered all.
Yeah, no worries. Well, my daughter just texted me when she's shit.
Yeah, okay, that seems to be
it?
Yeah. Wow, okay, I grossly underestimated how long this is going to take.
Oh, no, that's fine. I know you're like 15 minutes. I'm like, that's more than a 15-minute conversation. But
well, in my defense, I've never interviewed somebody before, so I thought
there you go.
In and out.
I don't even have any business cards to give you, but maybe I do. I moved. I got sent home in last March, and I haven't. I go into the office maybe once a month or whatever, but I've run out of business cards.
Oh, that's totally fine. Yeah, I have your contact information from the website, so that's perfect.
Oh, here we go. There's an old one.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, you got yourself.
Okay, yeah. Thanks again for everything. I really appreciate you taking
good luck with your projects. Yeah, maybe you could send me a copy of your final report.
I mean, it's not like a professional report.
No.